Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Value Streams, Leveraging Value-Driven Behavior. I'm here with Igor and Jack. Igor Minin is the head of the EngX Transformation Consulting. He's a University of Maryland graduate with his degree in computer science and an MBA. He's been at EPAM for 2 years and has a very cute daughter, if any of you saw the promo. Igor, you're also an adrenaline junkie, right? What's the latest that you've done to heighten your adrenaline?
Well, I do take motorcycles to the track, so I do, I won't say it race, but I do ride motorcycles on the track. I do play competitive, more or less aggressive sports called soccer and other various activities, but yes, I do enjoy less quiet type of activities, put it that way.
Very cool. Yeah, that's too cool for me. I'm definitely not an adrenaline junkie. What about you, Jack?
I am not an adrenaline junkie. Those days are far behind me at this point.
But a guitar player, perhaps?
Maybe. The closest I get to Igor's kind of excitement is going scuba diving. Mostly I fix guitars these days.
Wow, that's pretty cool, actually. A luthier by trade. But Jack is also the EngX Transformation Consultant. He's been in the enterprise technology space for 25 years. He has 2 books out. So, if you enjoy this talk, you should definitely check them out. Value Stream Mapping, The Secret to Successful Digital Transformation, which will help you do the actual value stream mapping. And an award-winning Best DevOps Book of 2020, Standing on Shoulders, A Leader's Guide to Digital Transformation. That is actually in the discussion panel of this talk. So if you need a link to that book, you can find it right there. Jack is also a DevOps and SRE instructor and DevOps ambassador. And how long have you been with EPAM, Jack?
I've been with EPAM for about 1.5 years now, so I may be an old timer, considering how much we've grown.
Excellent. Well, we're very glad to have you both here at EPAM and very much looking forward to this talk. So take it away.
Thanks. So we're going to talk about value today, and we're going to look at it from multiple different perspectives. We as individuals are very complicated, complex, and unique, and each of us has our own set of things that are important to us, and those are important. But as a population, collectively, we are somewhat predictable. We know how people will act in given situations, and the more we know about them and what's important to them, the better positioned we are to help them find their value, to help them be successful in what they're doing. But first, let's talk a little bit about EngX and who we are.
So this is our team. If this is not your first talk, then you may have already seen the slide. We have 3 main groups within the EngX practice. I lead the EngX consulting team. I got a little bit of a distraction here. Michael Williams has the North American Agile practice, and Alexei Didik is in charge of EngX program.
Sorry, are you ready to move on?
A little of a distraction here, apologies. So briefly on our history. Our group has been established in 2015 and has been growing since. Our portfolio of products and services has been expanding every year. We have been serving increasingly larger amount of clients year over year as well. And we expect this growth to continue into next year. Next slide. So at EPAM, we talk about value and value stream quite often. If you take any client-facing pitch deck and search for the word value, you're likely to find it mentioned multiple times. But what do we really mean by value? Given EPAM is an engineering organization, a lot of our focus is within the realm of building products and delivering them. Engineering excellence has traditionally focused on optimizing that delivery flow, taking work from backlog and reducing time of delivery to production, while at the same time focusing on improved quality and security. But this engineering component is just part of the value stream and the value delivery process. And in reality, it is no longer sufficient in isolation. We have to go farther, think larger, and evaluate our work in context of not just engineering value, but organizational value overall. All right.
Igor, This is a brand new slide, right? This is something that we've not talked about before at EPAM. Is that right?
Well, I mean, we did.
No, it's not.
It's not, right. If you've been to any, if you've seen or been part of any EngX or engineering excellence engagement, you probably have seen this as part of our decks. We talk about it a lot, and we talk about the value streams a lot. But traditionally, that focus has still been largely on the engineering aspect, which is challenging in itself when you're talking about big organizations and how they operate, and just connecting the dots between engineering and business.
Right, right. Okay, so if this isn't new, then why are we talking about it? Well, I'd suggest it's because something has changed, right? And if it's not us, if it's not our approach to value that's changed, then what has? Well, the world's changed. More importantly, we've changed. Over the past couple of years, we've seen a tremendous shift in how we act as people collectively and individually. As individuals, we're getting a lot more focus on those things that are important to us. We're focusing on our values, and we see this through things like the Great Resignation, right? Or other things where people are making decisions that aren't consistent with what we would have expected from them in the past, because they're demonstrating their values in ways that just weren't thought of before or weren't, just done. And also, given how challenging things have been, how challenging things are likely to be going forward, we're demanding more value for the investments that we make, right? When we spend our money, when we invest our time, when we exert effort, we want a better return for that. And all of this really comes down to this basic fundamental question of what's in it for me? A lot of times we poo-poo that question, right? We say, that's not important. What's important is for the good of all. Well, that's only true to some extent. It is a fair and valid question. It's an unavoidable question. If I ask you to do something differently, to stop what you're doing, to do something new and different, the first question that's going to come in your head, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, is why would I do that? What's in it for me? If we understand that, and we can help address that in a positive way, then we have an opportunity to not just influence behavior, but to do it in a way that's going to be beneficial for all of us, and everybody can get on board. So what does that mean then translated more fully? Well, from a social perspective, we are increasingly being driven by our values, right? We are making decisions about how we are going to live, what's important to us. And that's going to influence our society, right? We now see things like ESG, environmental, social, and governance issues being primary drivers for things like investments, for valuations, and is changing the relationships that we have structurally, both those relationships internally within EPAM and externally with all of the other people and organizations that we interact with. From an organizational perspective, let's take it a little bit higher. We again find increasing focus on value realization, not just activity, not just doing stuff, but ending up with results that are measurable and positive. Folks like manufacturing and industrial operations went to lean years, decades ago, because of just how effectively it works. Not even really talked about much in many cases in the manufacturing world because it's so consistently done. We've also seen it move into our technology spaces, right? Movements like DevOps, Agile, TOGAF, ITIL version 4, so different than what was before. All of them, all of our domains are focusing more and more on delivering value and working together as teams in iterative ways. We're also seeing more and more focus on the business agility, right? We're not interested in how many lines of code or function points were delivered. What we care about is the ability to do what we need to do to accomplish our mission, to be in alignment with our organization's goals and expectations so that we can deliver value and demonstrate those values that are important to us all at the same time. So it's a pretty heady mix. You might even ask yourself, great, what's this got to do with ESG? Or what's this got to do with EPAM? Is EPAM an ESG company? Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you're on LinkedIn, you just saw this recently, right? ESG is a mover for us and a lot of other folks around the world. There's a lot of pieces to this, right? Let's talk about value-driven behavior and the different components to that. We talked a little bit about what's in it for me. We also need to understand what our shared or common definition of value is, right? What is of value to us? We need to have that conversation. That can yield things like shared values. Some things we will hold in common as being very important to us, maybe even critical, but not all of them. And we can find those ones that do align. We do that all the time. Our friend group is probably very much the same thing with other people who think the same way, who see things similarly to we do, but have their own perspective as well. Value targets are a way for us to share and communicate what we want to do, what's important to us. Hey, we want to climb that mountain. We want to produce the best product ever, right? Those are value targets that we have. In order to do those, we need to create some value. And it's not sufficient to create value and put it on the shelf. We need to deliver that value to folks that need it. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. At EPAM, we've been talking about Value Creation Network for quite some time, but you don't find that language much outside of EPAM. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about value channels and what those might be and how we can leverage those to deliver better value, to deliver it better, deliver it faster. So let's talk about being value driven as people, right? Individuals, me, myself, and I, right? There are a lot of things that are core here, that are important, that should be and are a part for all of us. Number one is respect. I should be able to expect respect from everyone that I deal with. And everyone that deals with me should be expecting respect from me, right? No two ways about it. That is not even negotiable, right? At least the way we think. And humility, basic humility, not false humility, but saying, hey, you know what? I'm not good at everything. I'm not perfect. Some things I'm actually pretty terrible at. I want and need some help in some of those things. You know, if we spend time with these people, right, a third of our day, maybe we should care about those people. Maybe we should expect those people to care about us. Now, you know, if you want to work third shift in the factory and never deal with another person, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to be part of our value community that way, at least not directly. We might even go one more level. I dare not put it on the slide, but maybe we exhibit symptoms of love, that we love each other, that we love ourselves, right? So there's a lot to do here. And we're doing things all the time. The different professional domains that we belong to as developers, as architects, as testers, and every other role that we have are all developing these practices, these ways of dealing with people that are living those things, right? DevOps, not about a software pipeline, all about communications, collaboration. ITIL v4, you know, the agile flavors. We don't care what flavor, but we're talking about people and iteration and making progress. SREs, I view that as an extension of DevOps, right? Or even TOGAF. Everybody's getting involved in this. And Igor, some things that we're doing that make this happen, right?
Yep. So when we talk about value delivery, standardization and automation of this process becomes essential. Our enablement activities are consistently focused on outcomes such as individual and team engagement through self-service and proactive provisioning. This brings systemic safety to the operations, as well as insurance, ability to innovate, reduction in toil and transparency. But methodologies and processes are nothing without human involvement and having a tuned-in mindset. Making sure organizational culture is set around value creation and value delivery is really key to making the entire journey a success. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, you know, it can be a challenge too, like, okay, these are cool things, but how do we start, right? How do we get moving forward on this?
Right. So many organizations struggle with efficient value delivery. A big percentage of them do not even understand or measure the value itself and costs and inefficiencies associated with delivery of that value. The reason is we rarely think about it that way. Every day we do our best with what we have and what we know. but the world keeps changing. And as the trajectory changes, organizations need to change, and they need to adjust and innovate where the work is being done and by people who are doing that work. And our mindset needs to shift to align to mission and vision of the organization, as opposed to tactical and decentralized decision-making of the past. We need to become proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, one of the things that we can do to help with that is to consider, how we got here, and to solve the problem where it is the problem. I love this quote from Frank. We don't solve management problems at the team level, right? And so we need to make sure that we're solving the problem in the right place, and that we don't use the same mistaken approaches that got us into this mess. One way we might do that, as we look at what we deliver and how we deliver it, and what we're focusing on, is, when we're doing these things, the work that we do, the value that we create and deliver, is of what value to whom, right? We need to understand that value that we're delivering it, how it's being measured, or how it's being used, and by whom, because frankly, some stakeholders are more important than others. So when we understand the value that's being delivered, we know who it's going to and what that value means, then we have the information that we need to identify the work, and more importantly, prioritize it. We can start to work on those things that bring the greatest value, especially in the context of alignment with our goals and outcomes. And one of the things that is a really powerful tool in finding these and having the conversation are value stream maps. They were introduced into the lean world back in the Toyota production system from the very beginning. So the concept's been around since the 1950s. It used to be really hard work, and anyone who's done one will let you know they're hard to build and they're hard to maintain. But like we talked about it a minute ago, the world has changed, and now we've got tools and better ways to address what it is that we need and want to get done. The first thing, as we talked about before, is looking at how we define value and what it means to us. Our organization, all of our clients, all have a reason for existing. There was something that happened, something that they did, something that they were aware of, some opportunity to specifically create and deliver value to someone. One of my favorite ways to do this is to look at the example set by Simon Sinek and his golden circles. If you are unfamiliar with Simon, you might want to go out and Google him. In particular, he gave a presentation at TED Talks back in Puget Sound, probably 2015-ish or so. Only 50, 60 people in the room, but it knocked everybody's socks off. It started a whole new way of thinking for a lot of folks, and that is to understand why we exist. Who do we serve? What is it about this that makes it of value, right? So let's understand why we're here and what we're doing, first of all. That's going to set value targets that we talked about before. Value targets are a great way to communicate what it is that we want to see happen. What are the ideal outcomes, the desired result from the activities? What do we aspire to? What do we want to be when we grow up? What does that look like? For those of you that have been through MBA programs, there's a lot of times they talk about things like the commander's intent. What is it that we want to accomplish as the end of this? Not just a set of instructions of take these steps, but what are the outcomes that we need to get to, right? And these, in this context, really need to be true values. There's things that we care about organizationally as people. So, for example, we need to do this in a business context. We need to focus on business outcomes. We might say that we, as an organization that is here to take care of the homeless, well, our goal is that everyone that comes to our door gets food. Everyone that comes to our door is offered a place to sleep. That sets the goals, right? That talks about what we're here to do. Or it may be that we are in a competitive marketplace and it's getting tougher and tougher, and our costs are just too high. If we don't cut our costs by at least 10%, we won't be competitive in the marketplace anymore. How's that for aligning our vision and purpose, right? Maybe, and we had a client recently that came to us, their development time for new products was double what the market could support. right? If they're going to stay in business, they've got to cut their development time in half, at least, just to stay alive, and more if they want to, really take the lead. So do these help us align on our goals and targets? I think they do, right? These are ways to communicate what we need to do, what we need to get to. Now, value streams are ways that we can represent that. All of the things that we need to do in order to get that outcome. What are the inputs? What are the processes? What are all the things that we have to do? And we use value stream maps to do that because they're visual representations of these flow and information. And as we talked about before, our organizations have put a tremendous amount of investment into these value streams. Right? We pump money in, we build capabilities, we buy systems, we hire people, we do all of these investments so that we can have a result. But we know that at every time we have a transition from one team to another, every time we have a missed requirement, every time we don't do something we need to do, we lose some of that investment. We don't get the full value and benefit of it. And we want to, right? We don't want to waste these dollars. We don't want to waste our time and effort. So we wanted to look at how we could do this. And one way to visualize this is if we thought about this as a golden garden hose, right? That's going to pour money into our checking account. What are the things that we would want to have do that, right? We never want it to stop. We want it to flow all the time. We don't want any of that money leaking out and giving it to the government, right? We want all of that money to flow into our checking account. If we think about that flow of value in the same way in our organization, then we can apply those same ways of thinking. And here's one way we might do that. Now, I'm going to tell you here, I'm going to dip into a amateur anthropology here for a moment, because we're going to talk about how people are acting and not how we project it or what we think it should be, but what we think we see actually happening on the ground. And we're going to go a little bit non-Western here. We're going to start on the right-hand side of the slide and move our way left, right? So right now we have a lot of value streams in our organization. We could think about our different practices as different value streams within EPAM, right? So we've got our EngX, we've got products, we've got EngX, we've got all of these, we Agile, I'm forgetting a bunch of folks, but all of these are different value streams in our organization, and we can map those out, and we have teams based on. We also, and this is unique to EPAM, we have value creation networks. I don't know of anybody else that's using that term, and I absolutely love it because there's a lot of other things going on. If I reach out to someone in our cloud practice, are they going to come and help us? Absolutely, right? So they're going to be someone that's in our value creation network. We don't have a formal relationship in place. We don't have SLAs or agreements, but we do have common goals. We're part of a community, and those can come and go as we need them. We pull in folks across our organization because we don't need to build all of those capabilities in each and every place. And then we have these more broad value channels. Those would be people that are outside of EPAM, in other parts of the world and other organizations, people who may not even know we exist and we don't know they exist yet, but we do share common values. So we have these opportunities to reach out. And in this value channel, that's probably the most unique term on here. It's something that's very informal. It's an organic movement, right? It may be people who care about animals, right? And if we're in the veterinary business, then we know that people who care about animals are going to be where we're going to find our peeps, right? So what is it that makes all of this important? Well, it really is a way of understanding how people are acting so that we can leverage that and provide them with what they need and provide the right kinds of approaches and support in the right places. Let's talk a little bit more about the Value Creation Network. So this is something that has been around for a while at EPAM, hasn't it, Igor?
Yep, it was. So what are these value creation networks? VCNs are loosely aligned and informal associations between people and groups with the goal of bringing connections and expertise of different people to a common table. This helps improve cohesion, reduce siloed operations, minimize duplication, and really reducing friction. This networks is synergetic and empower enablement of application of expertise and experience in any given domain. So EPAM has done this before and continues doing this. A prime example is Insurance Tribe, which facilitates significantly easier engagement with new clients, given the ability to access to the right people, skill sets, and knowledge aggregated from prior and current engagements in the insurance field. So just a good example of how the concept is being leveraged within EPAM. Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in this case, we don't even call it a VCN, right? This is a little bit less formal than some of the more formalized VCNs that we have in EPAM. So it's a really cool idea that's getting some traction now. Again, I love the fact that EPAM was doing this before it was a thing, right? And we're just now starting to see some other folks in the world do this. So, for example, our friends at TaskTop have started to talk a little bit about value stream networks, which is a similar idea. So it's coming along around the globe, I think. Value channels, on the other hand, though, are very different in that there is no formal relationship there, right? It is a groups of folks that have no relationship whatsoever that do share common goals or thinkings or belief. And in this case, if we thought about the fact if we were going to be a retailer that's selling model trains, and there's a lot of different folks within our organization that are going to have value streams. And I want to talk about some of the other kinds. We focus on development value streams a lot, our software development lifecycle, our software pipelines. But other parts of our organizations are also value streams, whether they are supporting value streams or operational value streams. So we would rely on value streams from folks in marketing, manufacturing, engineering, and other places. We might also then find that there are other folks in our value creation network that don't do model trains, but have all of the other stuff that makes model trains more fun and more interesting. We would even be able to find value channels, things like the train museums and train clubs, right? So this helps to round out where we might find other ideas, other participants, other kinds of value. But let's circle in just a little bit here on value stream mapping, a little bit about why they came about. We touched on that already. And why would you care about a value stream map? Let's talk about that. Let's take a look at value stream maps. Some of this is going to look pretty familiar to you guys, right? So along the bottom here, this is the part of value stream maps that we at EPAM do a lot, and we do it pretty well. We look at the lead time, the cycle time, right? Effort versus duration. How much time are we actually doing work versus when are we waiting for someone to give us something for the work, right? And why do we do that? Because all of this wait time is wasted, right? That's not where we want to focus our time and energy. We want to move out of here and up into here, right? But what does this really mean, right? This is interesting, it's important, but it's just a fraction of what we actually can get from a value stream map. Let's talk about what makes a value stream map different, right? So first of all, it begins and ends with a customer. Up here in the upper right corner of this diagram, it starts and ends here. In this case, let's walk through this real quickly. The value stream map gives us a whole bunch of different kinds of information. As I mentioned, we're going to start with the customer. What is it that the customer wants and needs? Somehow or another, we're going to get that information, right? They send us a request. Maybe they send us an email. Maybe they put something on Twitter, right? There are a lot of different ways that we could get this information. And somehow our product management experts, those folks that know where we're going and what we need to do, come up with what do we want to do with that new request. Well, we're going to identify some sort of a minimum viable product, and then that's going to be moved on to the portfolio manager, where we start to do some backlog grooming. So for most of us, none of this is really in what we're looking at or measuring today. We need to change that, and we'll talk about that in a second. The bottom half, though, is what we're doing today. And again, we're looking at this from a software development lifecycle perspective. So in this case, customers asked for a new feature. Product management said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. We could do that. They've provided the MVP then to the portfolio managers who can work it in to figure out when do we have the resources, when do we have the money, when do we have the time, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually they're going to deliver in an increment of some sort of an MVP to the folks that are doing requirements. And we're not going to get into how we're doing the requirements. Don't care if it's Agile or if it's RUP or if it's Waterfall. This will work the same way, but of course we prefer Agile. We're going to then take that information, and the folks that are doing the requirements are going to do some sort of feature definition. They're going to result in a story that we can move on to our development testing folks, right? And those stories are then going to be used to create code, which will be delivered then into our production environment. In this case, we're going to use microservices and containers because we're, contemporary kind of folk. And that's going to be then delivered in the form of an app into our production environment or for distribution, right? So now we can then deliver that value to the customer. Along the way here, you're going to see, those of you that have done value stream mapping in the past, stuff that you haven't seen before, right? What are these boxes down here? Well, these are those things that we're going to communicate. These are the things that we care about. These are the things that we're going to measure. So we're going to look at how are we doing in terms of maintaining our priority and our work in the backlog? Are we working on the right things? What's our team velocity? How are we leveraging shared services? What are the KPIs that we have agreed that we're going to take a look at? And how are we doing on percent complete and accurate? We don't want garbage. We don't want to give garbage, right? So we need and give that feedback. And along the way, we share all of these kinds of things that are important to us, that we've agreed to, are going to measure in some way our performance, right? And we want this to be a very visual thing. Why would we want to make this visual? Why would we want to do that? Well, because the more we understand about the other pieces, right? If I'm doing requirements and I find out that we're really not doing the right kinds of things here, I want to fix that. And I won't know unless I get that percent complete and feedback, right? This is one of the most fundamental things. Did you give me what I needed? Is it the right stuff? Did you give me all of the stuff, right? This, the more we can communicate this, the more we can share this, the better it's going to be for all of us, right?
Yep.
So let's take a look at how we might use that. Here's a case. We actually did this once a few years ago. This was back in 2015. The problem that we had was same development life cycle, but we were getting a lot of complaints that it took us too long to resolve defects, right? And that was a real problem from our customers. And it was also expensive because we were spending a lot of time on those defects. So what we did was we put in a trigger. We were using HP Quality Center to track our quality. When a defect was logged, we would typically use the standard approach of taking that defect, assigning it into a backlog. Teams would then, pull that backlog from a product backlog into their team backlog. They would then have to do the evaluation of the work to be done, blah, blah, blah. You've done this. What we did instead was when it hit Quality Center, we used a tool called TaskTop's Hub to identify, hey, there's a new defect in here that has just been identified, whether it is in production or in the distribution process. Let's create a ticket. We know where that code came from because it was just checked in and it was just implemented, right? Or it was implemented a year ago, but we know where the code came from. So we send that code right back to that team because they're the ones that know it better than everyone else. They don't have to re-diagnose it, right? They can jump right in. We know what we changed. What did that do? Well, number one, it tremendously accelerated the process. We eliminated those manual things, which took hours, minutes, days sometimes. We eliminated the steps of, trying to figure out who did that, right? We put it right back into that team's hands so they could address it most quickly and easily. And we kind of thought we were going to, poke the hornet's nest a little bit with this, right? Turns out not so much. The teams loved it because it didn't expose their dirty laundry to a bunch of other folks, right? They had control of their own destiny. And it really reinforced our message of, you own this, right? You write it, you own it. That pride in craftsmanship, that ownership, it really reinforced that. So it had tons of benefit for everybody along the whole value stream. Now, that leads us to the next step. All right, let's say we've done that. Now, if we apply our tools and our capabilities of automation, I mean, who's better at that than us? Let's start to manage this value stream. Let's automate some of these things, like we just talked about with that ticket creation. Let's do some toil reduction, right? Let's reduce the amount of work someone has to do. I don't have to go create all those stupid friggin' tickets now because they've all been created. I can now focus on which are the most important of those stupid friggin' tickets, right? We can then build in these capabilities for systemic safety. I won't assign it to the wrong team because I fat fingered it, right? I didn't choose the wrong one. The system did it, and it does it right at least most of the time, better than me as a person. And this gets us to the point of being able to observe what's going on in our processes that we care about, right? We have the data, we can see what's happening, and ideally we're doing it in a visual way, right? So some of you might be saying, wow, this is all kind of neat and cool, but what's it got to do with us? Well, the reality is we're doing a lot of this right now. Value stream management as a topic is an emerging market. It was just identified in 2020 as an emerging platform by Gartner. If we look at Gartner's hype cycle, value stream management is just climbing. It's ascending almost to the top of the hype cycle. So what does that mean? Everybody's talking about it. People are chasing it, and we can help them. There's a ton of immature products out there and services that aren't quite ready for prime time. Well, that's where we really shine, right? We can come in and help on every part of this. And it doesn't require something new and exotic. If we look at some of these examples of value stream management approaches on the screen, you're going to see a ton of familiar logos here, right? These are all things that we are doing today. These are systems that we're using, systems that we're implementing with clients, right? And now it's really a matter of kind of stringing them together and adding some new stuff in, that's some new capabilities. Things like chat ops, right? What is that? Are we doing that? Maybe. I can tell you that in the past, my teams used Rocket Chat for our chat ops, and that enabled us to have a team channel where we could share different stories or what was going on. But what was really cool and interesting from a technology perspective is we could kick off our pipeline from the chat channel. We could see that, oh, there's been a new build started. Oh, rats, we got some error messages. But everybody gets it, real time, all in the channel. We can see what's going on. So we don't have to have that around the horn stuff buried in email. And it's not just chatting either, right? It's actual execution and capabilities. And it's pulling all of these different kinds of tools together. So you might be asking, so what? Cool. What do we do with this, Jack? What do we do with this, Igor?
Well, technically, I mean, we're doing all this today anyway, right? So the difference is, can we own this culturally, right? We're doing all of this piece by piece, everybody on their place. We're connecting this into a process, into a value stream flow. But culturally, we may not look at it from the perspective of the overall value delivery, but rather from an individual thing that I'm doing in my spot, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that what's in it for me? That, I mean, it feels like it's an easy question, but what does that feel like? Right? It gets kind of weird sometimes, right? But and especially I think the challenge here is that answer might change over time, right? So we can't just ask that question once and then assume that's it for all time. You know, say your piece or hold it forever. Not so much, because, and not only that, even if we know one piece, we might have evolving, conflicting, or even contradictory ideas sometimes, right? So what do we do about that?
Right.
We keep talking.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, the world is evolving, and we need to, again, like you just said, you need to reevaluate at any point in time, how do you culturally, again, what is that value? How do we, as we talked before, as things evolve, we need to reevaluate decisions we made in the past. We need to look at it from the big picture perspective rather than focus on the small thing. And so, you know, we can be better partners in that sense by, you know, enabling and empowering ourselves and looking across the borders of our, you know, individual functions. So,
yeah, you bet. I mean, we could be much better partners going, hey, you still good with this? Didn't take much, right? Just, you know, just touching base. Yeah. Oh, no, you're right. That did change, right? We need to adjust a little bit. And by doing this, we really position ourselves to better satisfy our partners. We better position them to satisfy us, right? And the more we can do this with transparency, you know, let's be real clear about what we're doing. Let's share our vision. Let's focus on that vision. Let's focus on the data and not the people as much, right? Because then we can let the people rise to the occasion. And overall, what we really want to do, right? What is it that makes the best job ever? Is being able to meaningfully contribute to something I care about, right?
Mhm.
That goes beyond pay, that goes beyond anything else. I'm doing something I want to do, I care about it, it's got an outcome that I'm invested in. That's engagement, right? That's how we stay hooked in. We'd like to invite you to join. We're beginning our own value-based VCN, and we'd love for you to come join us. We've got a lot of different areas, a lot of different stuff going on, and I'd like to see these replaced by more and more things that you're doing, that folks who feel the same way, folks who want to take their skills and apply them to the benefit of us as a community and as an organization. We'd love to have you come join us and contribute, the value that you bring.
Yeah. And so just looking at this again, coming back from looking at it at the very beginning, and we talked about this being really an engineering focused thing. I think this diagram here now talks more, it should expand the vision as far as looking outside of just the technology and look at the entire process, right? All of these things here impact the value delivery. They influence how the value is being delivered, what that value is, and how efficient the process is. And from our perspective, it's important to understand and optimize those things in context of value delivery, rather than in context of the individual practices or individual focus areas, and not do technology for the sake of technology, do technology for the sake of value optimization for the organization. Jack?
Absolutely. A great job in Igor on covering that. And there's so many pieces. You all have pieces of this. The one thing we'd suggest is when you come into opportunities, drag in the folks from EngX, because we've got deep and broad skills on all of these, and we want to help bring in the right folks and the right resources at the right time. So reach out to us, let us help you. Now, we've talked a whole bunch. Nobody's asked a single question so far. Not sure I left anybody any room to, but now's a great time to ask questions.
Yes, and if you have any, please submit them on the question and answer button on Jack. That's how we'll be able to see them. I have a question for you, Jack and Igor, about a lot of what you're talking about. Well, actually, first off, how can we join your value VCN? Like, how can we stay in touch with you guys as far as that?
Send us an email, drop us a Teams chat. Anyway, you want to send me a postcard? Do that too. Whatever way is good for you, let us know. We welcome all of you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I also wanted to just ask you guys, as a Scrum Master or Agile coach, because that's my background, a lot of what I teach in trainings is around empiricism and the transparency, inspection, and adaptation that comes with empiricism and the Agile, processes that we teach to people. And it seems like that's a lot of what you're talking about here, no? Like with the value streams as well, getting that data and the feedback. Can you talk a little bit more to that?
You want that? Or
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
And I just want to breathe. I know your voice is
yes,
challenging.
thank you.
So, yeah. So no, and you're exactly right, Alexa. There are a lot of similarities here, and in fact, those folks that are in the audience that are familiar with ITIL version 4 may be feeling the same way, like the folks on value and value chains, right? The folks that are from TOGAF, are also going, yeah, we've been talking about this for years. You're absolutely right. It is very much in alignment with what we're doing as professionals. And it really, it enables us now to help others better. It used to be that we were very introspective. When I first started in IT, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't even know that we know what we were doing, right? We were unconscious incompetence, but we've gotten better. And now I can, I can reasonably do development without taking down a production network. So now I can look outward a little bit further, right? I don't have to be so focused on myself because I know what I'm doing. Now I can help others and help others help me. And that's where these really come together, right? This alignment, right? This transparency, this shared vision. that's where this all comes together. So it works just as well for us internally as it would externally.
Absolutely. Thank you for speaking on that. Let me just check and see. We've got one question. Would pigeons work for sending messages, Jack?
Pigeons could work. It's a slower process. The feedback loop is kind of rugged, but yeah, any way that
Excellent.
we can exchange ideas.
And I believe at EPAM as well that we've created a way of viewing people from different networks in order to reach out to them and looking at them. Do you guys know about this? Can you talk a little bit more about how fellow EPAMers can create their own VCNs?
Sure, we see it all the time. Igor talked earlier about the insurance tribe. It's a great example of an informal, a little more formal VCN than our value VCN so far, right? But it follows that whole thing. And if we go back and look at the definition of the VCN, it is sometimes temporary. It is continuing to build and evolve. We bring people in and people evolve out as their needs and values, correspond with what we're doing or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think even things like our Plus application could be used to kind of create those on a smaller scale, just because you're getting that cross pollination of ideas.
Sure. Yammer would be another great place for us to start with, VCNs, right? Let's do a crawl, walk, run. Start with something super simple. Honestly, we started this VCN right now. It's a group of 4 folks in a Teams chat, right? And we'll
Perfect.
grow it from there. We can share files, we can share ideas, we can share apps as those are pulled in, right? So Teams is an ideal place. Zero, threshold, zero barrier to entry. Just create the Teams chat. If we have things that we find are in common, then let's invite a couple more, right? Invite some, hey, I just heard somebody else just gave a presentation on that. Let's reach out to them. Let's combine our efforts.
Absolutely. And also our We Are community platform, in-house creation for very similar thing. Well, thank you both. I think we're approaching our ending time here, if I'm not mistaken. So we are going to ask you all, if you don't have any other questions, to please move on over to our next talk here, which is going to be from Michael Williams, talking about Agile and the EngX approach to Agile, which fits very nicely with this talk as well, going a little deeper into the Agile perspective of value streams. and
not a coincidence.
Not a coincidence. Thank you very much to our EngX organizers who have put this together. It's been a great experience, and we hope you join us in the next talk.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks,
Thank you,
Igor.
everyone.
Thank you. Connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yes, I'm going to put that in our discussion too, as well, our discussion area. I'll put Jack's LinkedIn. So.
Thank you.